The book The Girls by Laurie Lansens is a highly enrapturing novel that details the life of two conjoined twins named Ruby and Rose and their life as they grow up in Canada and live with their adopted parents who they call Aunt Lovey and Uncle Stash. Aunt Livy is a free-willed, strong woman who doesn't take no for an answer, and her husband, who they call Uncle Stash, is a Slavic who has very poor English, but can always get his thoughts across and is a very loving man. And the two of them, who seem like complete polar opposites in appearances and cultures and language, mold together and create this perfect parental identity for Ruby and Rose, and really help the two of them develop their own unique identities, seeming as they share the same body and heart. And it's saddening to see the two of them deal with certain types of stigmas regarding the way they look. Some people consider them a freak of nature, and seeing them try to find love, seeming as they can never get away from each other, and seeing their each alternating chapters from Lansens portrays it as coming from one of the twins, one chapter by Ruby, and the other chapter by Rose, and you see their own different type of diction. They have different types of talking. Ruby loves art and music, and Rose just rather likes to, and see them deal with certain medical conditions that are, in complete correlation to the fact that they are conjoined. They can't stand up for long periods of time, or they feel winded, or Ruby's leg is 3 inches longer to support the weight of her being on the smaller end in stature, and that she has to support Rose's body her whole life. And the girls have crinks in their necks all the time from their heads both being next to each other. And it's very interesting to see the way that they live and how they don't take anything for granted, given that their life is a miracle in itself. My favorite passage in this book contains a spoiler, but it's not it's a spoiler, but it's, I think, the most beautifully written passage in the whole book, and it details the part of Ruby, Rose, Uncle Stash, and Aunt Lovey all driving in their car home like they've done millions of times before, and unfortunately getting into a car accident, and you'll see what happens. And this occurs on page 313. Aunt Lovey looked away from Uncle Stash and returned her eyes to the road, where two fat black crows were picking at some carrion. Instinct possessed Aunt Lovey to swerve. She hit a rut in the road and lost control of the car. The mercury flew in the air and came down hard, nose first, in the deepest part of the drainage ditch. Ruby and I were strapped into the back seat with the harness Uncle Stash had custom made and bolted to the frame. We were in the air, then we were not. It happened so fast. Ruby and I never spoke a word to each other in the moments after the crash, or in the hours and days after the accident. We didn't speak any words at all, not for a very long time. And to this day, we have never spoken about the accident, the details of what did or did not happen. And to this day, we have never spoken about the accident, the details of what did or did not happen. I tell myself that Ruby's eyes were squeezed shut and that she didn't watch Aunt Lovey slam against the windshield and snap at the neck, then clang against the steering wheel like a ringer on a bell. It was all over in a matter of seconds, the way accidents are. Aunt Lovey was perfectly still, and so was I, and so was Ruby. The strawberries, which had been stacked in baskets on the seat beside Aunt Lovey, were tipped over, strewn about the dash. Their fragrance mingled with the smell of fuel and the mustiness of the ditch. At first, the air was so still and quiet, I thought I might have gone deaf. But the crickets and cicadas, whose day we'd rudely interrupted, resumed their communication, and bees began to buzz. And I saw, in my periphery, a muskrat sniff the window of the mercury, lured there by the berries, then frightened off by Ruby and me. I was struck by how fast Uncle Stash made it to the car on his bad leg, and impressed that he didn't have his cane when he opened the door. Uncle Stash didn't brush away the strawberries or mention them at all, though he must have seen them and smelled them when he climbed into the front seat. He looked into the back seat at Ruby and me, and then beside him at Aunt Lovey. I don't know if I spoke or if Ruby did, but one of us said, "We're okay." He could barely catch his breath. "Girls. Good. Girls. But you," he whispered, laying his palm gently on Aunt Lovey's back, "you are not okay, my love. Are you? Are you?" Uncle Stash stroked Aunt Lovey's back as a worried father would a sick child. My Lovey, oh my Lovey. He pulled Aunt Lovey's head from the dash. I wonder now if he was torturing himself, or fortifying himself, or assuring himself by forcing a look at her mangled face. A crash lasting only seconds, not even at highway speed, yet her nose was horribly broken, her cheek shattered, blood at the cave of her nostril, something clear dripping from her ear. Uncle Stash made a sound, an indescribable sound, not a cry, smaller than a cry, barely audible, but a sound that held such horror and such grief I wanted to cover my ear in case it came again. The sound did come again, and I realized it was me. Shh, Uncle said. Shh, Uncle Stash said. It's all right, Rose. Girls. Shh. Though I don't believe in such things, I thought I saw something like radiant heat or a wisp of smoke rise up from Aunt Lovey's body and hover over Uncle Stash before dissipating. I imagined the wisp was her soul, remaining briefly to say, I love you, goodbye. I think it kissed my cheek. Also, there's a continuation. This is not happening in the same passage, but it's happening in the same chapter, and I just wanted to incorporate it because I think it really finishes it out. And it starts on 316. In the days that followed, I found myself wishing that Mr. Merkel hadn't pulled Uncle Stash from the wreckage of the car. In spite of their imperfect union, their different interests and language and culture, Uncle Stash and Aunt Lovey shared an essential vein and should never have been separated. After the funeral, Uncle Stash spoke only a little. He would not eat at all. He stared at the dark bedroom wall, waiting. If Uncle Stash had remained in Aunt Lovey's embrace after the crash, I think he could have willed himself to death instantly. Instead, it took a week. Some people will understand that Ruby and I were relieved to find him gone one morning. How cruel it must be for a man to live past his soul. This book, not beautiful because each chapter Lansen decides to alternate between each twin, one Ruby and then the next Rose, giving us a dual experiences of the life that they live, but also shows how beautiful life is in itself when you have two girls who shouldn't be alive at all or shouldn't have made it past age of 13 or 18 and are now sitting here at 28, 30, looking back at their lives and who are sitting here at 18, 28, 30, and Lori Lansens is showing us how anything is imaginable. And then the death of their Aunt Lovey, you see how love captures Uncle Stash and how it consumes him and how at the end it kills him. But maybe not kills him, but releases him. And to me, this book, though I read a long time ago, has always been stuck with me and has always been a reread because it's so beautiful and it's so enrapturing. And to be honest, it's a very unique book, and I think that it should be read by all.